The Great American Civil War raged on battlefields from 1861 until 1865. At its end, the citizens of the preserved Union mourned the passing of its newly fallen president. As the train carrying Lincoln's coffin arrived in Columbus for a viewing in the Ohio State House on April 29, 1865, the future looked bleak. The country lay in tatters, its people exhausted, and many of its cities devastated. Over 350,000 Ohio men had gone to war to protect the Union. More than 34,000 had died from battle. Another 30,000 were so badly damaged mentally or physically they could no longer care for themselves or their families. In his second inaugural address, Lincoln clearly articulated the obligation this carnage placed upon the nation when he said, "Let us care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan." The Grand Army of the Republic, the first organized advocacy group of veterans in the history of the United States, responded. Composed of Union veterans from all services, the GAR quickly became a power in Ohio. Home of legendary Union heroes such as Grant, Sheridan, Sherman, Garfield, Hayes, Stanton, and Chase, native sons who had served the righteous cause. Recognizing the needs of the families left behind or in need, the Ohio GAR soon began fighting another battle to provide support for the hundreds of young children of veterans left without a home. Despite fierce opposition, the strenuous lobbying efforts of the GAR, along with the strong support of newly elected Governor Rutherford B. Hayes and his wife Lucy, finally forced the Ohio General Assembly to act. In 1870, legislation was enacted to open the Ohio Soldiers and Sailors Orphans Home. It was one more grand victory for the determined member soldiers of the GAR. Thanks to them, the home would remain a beacon of kindness and understanding for children for the next 125 years. The final effort to delay the operation of the home was stopped by the thinnest of margins, one vote. It's difficult today to understand the level of hostility to the creation of a home for orphans. But back then, in mid-1800s America, children simply were not treated all that well. Those without family support, depending on age, were placed in infirmaries or asylums, the homeless shelters of their day. Older children were often placed in private homes to learn a trade. This sometimes worked well, but often the child simply became an extra worker and not part of the family. Others were simply left to roam the streets. Ohio had previously established other facilities for those in need: the deaf, the blind, the mentally ill, and the developmentally disabled. But nothing for orphans, who were incredibly the last on the list of social concerns. But a new spirit to care for those who could not care for themselves was sweeping the country. And in Ohio, veterans organizations led the charge to repay the moral debt owed to families damaged in the great national struggle just ended. On August 24, 1870, 125 children and a few employees walked to their new home a mile south of Xenia from temporary quarters downtown. As they climbed the winding road up the hill, they carried the few material possessions they owned. For these children and those who would follow, everything was about to change. They would be fed, housed, given medical attention, and an education. Most importantly, they would have something they hadn't before: a place to live a normal life. Joe Morris, son of a Civil War veteran, was one such child.
I was brought to the home by an aunt, my mother having died in childbirth, and literally left on the doorstep at age 5.
Joe Morris. In the beginning, there were 3 cottages and a temporary administration building, which served as employee housing, dining hall, kitchen, and school. By 1873, there were 600 children, 20 cottages, a finance administration building, a chapel, a hospital, a domestic building which served as a dining hall, and also a kitchen and bake shop. Farming had started, and a barn and farmhouse were part of the campus. By 1900, the number of children had increased to approximately 1,000. Olga Brummagem, class of 1901, was grateful to be one of them.
All my dearest memories are of the home. A child in school there, graduated there, courted there, and married there.
Olga Brummagem. By 1914, the Ohio Soldiers and Sailors Orphans Home had a campus of nearly 500 acres, housing dozens of administrative, educational, vocational, and residential buildings, as well as a working farm, orchard, and lake. It had become one of the grandest and most successful social experiments of the 19th century. In some ways, it was a product of the times, but the home was different and unique in one special way. Children came to the home throughout most of its history because their remaining family members wanted them there. They were not placed by a government agency. They came not because they were poor or because they had a painful home life or they were troublesome. They came because they had a right to be there. It was partial compensation for a debt that could not be repaid, their father's service to his country. The home became the family many children never had. The home gave students a sense of trust, security, and confidence. Childhood became normal again. Mike Ford, class of '38, never minded being described as an orphan.
I never saw many kids that weren't impressed with the way we were living. The home was good to me. We liked the word orphanage.
Mike Ford. Some things were a constant at the home during its entire history, from 1870 through 1995. As regular as the steam whistle that awakened them every day, calling them to their daily duties. During those years, the population averaged 500 or more boys and girls on campus, from 4-year-olds to age 18. You had to be a child of a veteran to gain admission. Often large families arrived at the same time. Good food and as much as you wanted was always available. For most of its history, the home produced its own food from the farm. It had a prize-winning herd of cows. To this day, residents of the home swear it was the best milk they ever tasted. There was always a military edge to campus life. Formal military training for boys began at age 12. In the beginning, the boys wore uniforms. Girls also wore standardized clothing and had few dress options until later years. Everyone, boys and girls, marched to school and to meals. The Home Cadet Band was a particular point of pride. Some believe it was the first high school band in America. From the early 1870s, parades, led by the band, were held each Sunday during the spring and fall. Area citizens attended concerts held in the campus band shell. Notably, the band was frequently invited by veterans to march at their state and national conventions all across America, a tribute to their fine reputation. The annual Memorial Day Parade was the most poignant of home traditions. The superintendent led the 1/2-mile march through campus to the small cemetery behind Collier Chapel. Veterans representatives, the band, companies of the cadet battalion wearing special white pants, older girls in luminous white dresses, and pairs of little boys and girls followed. The boys carried American flags on their shoulders, and the girls held baskets of fragrant peonies. With measured step to slow, solemn music, they made their way to the 100 or so graves and decorated them. After student recitations of the Gettysburg Address and Flanders Fields, an important dignitary spoke. It was an event forever seared in the memories of those in attendance. From the outset, African Americans were accepted, and they participated in all student activities, although housing was segregated until 1962. Still, the home, to its credit, changed to match the times. Employees always lived on campus and were part of student life after their work hours. The employee commitment was real and appreciated by the children. Students received both an academic and vocational education. The idea of a dual education was very new. The home was an innovator of the concept. The children were in school all day, a half day in academic classes, and a half day in a trade they chose. The concept recognized that students would need a way to support themselves after graduation. Religion was always an important part of growing up at the home. The chapel was one of the first buildings constructed. Sunday services were mandatory. Prayer was offered at each meal. Services were Protestant and non-denominational. Catholic children attended services downtown. Events at the home were chronicled by a newspaper or magazine published on site. Christmas was always a magical time at the home. The entire campus was decorated inside and out. The day began in the large dining hall, decorated with 7 Christmas trees ablaze with lights. After a special Christmas breakfast, the lights were dimmed and the choir entered. Choir members carried lighted candles, singing the home's own Christmas carol, first performed in 1887. Gifts, abundant in number and many donated and wrapped by the good men and women of veterans groups, were then opened to the delight of the children. This was followed by a service of thanks in the chapel and a turkey lunch. Then the children who had extended family were allowed to leave, while those who remained were kept busy in fun pursuits for the remainder of the day. No wonder Christmas at the home remains a fond memory to those who experienced it. Finally, veterans organizations always supported the home. First, it was the GAR and the Women's Relief Corps. In the 20th century, the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion took up the torch, and other veteran organizations followed. They also served as an effective lobbying force at the State House for the good of the children. Those who benefited appreciated the devotion. Lester Anderson, class of 1956.
For the first time in my life, I had a bed to myself. I love this strange but wonderful place.
Lester Anderson. A wide variety of activities followed for a well-rounded childhood and made it special. This self-contained community had its own newspaper, band, choir, hospital, church, laundry, tailor and shoe shops, greenhouse, swimming pool, movie theater, scout programs, 4-H, rifle team, drama programs, summer camp, and Orphans Den, where boys and girls could socialize. And the sports teams were legendary, often competing with and defeating much larger regular schools. For example, the track and field squad won 6 state championships. The 1937 and 1941 football teams not only remained unbeaten for the year, but were never scored upon. And for one unbelievable stretch, the 40, 41, and 42 cadet football teams ran off 26 victories in a row. Yes, for 125 years, from 1870 to 1995, on a vast campus that offered so much for so many, the home provided a lifeline for over 13,500 children. It faced many challenges through the decades: epidemics, fires, tornadoes, and political and social challenges. Through it all, the home persevered for the sake of its children. Some thought they owed their life to it. Laura Perdue, class of 1981.
My brother once said, "The home changed your life, and it turned you around." I told someone that if it weren't for the home, I don't think I'd be alive.
Laura Perdue. The lives of these children and the place the home holds in their hearts are remembered near or on every 4th of July when the Association of Ex-Pupils gathers on the grounds for their annual reunion. The memories of those who were here are felt in this small graveyard, the tombstones worn with age, and also in this museum located on the former grounds. As you look around, it takes little imagination to still hear tiny girls laughing in the Peter Pan cottage. See sweethearts sharing secrets with each other on the main campus. Hear the band's music waft across the grounds. Watch the battalion proudly march. Hear the cheers rise from the football field. Or observe a student proudly stand to receive their high school diploma. But even more extraordinary is to realize that this traditional, conventional, typical, ordinary childhood was made possible by an institution, a remarkable institution, and that for many, it was the only childhood they would ever know, a normal childhood. Bill Siobhan, class of 1955.
In certain weather in the morning, I go outside and the smell of the grass, the air sends me back. It is summer, a nice day, and I get the feeling of well-being. I'm 10 years old again, at the home, my home.
Yes, there will always be a home.